Let's bring in another opponent of the tax cut deal, Congressman Bobby Scott, the Democrat of Virginia. Thank you for your time tonight, Congressman.
Thank you, Keith.
I want to get your position on the deal as a whole, but first about debt transparency. You also support full release of these numbers, correct? And why do they matter?
I do. Well, if we're going to pass these tax cuts, we have to acknowledge that it's going to be with borrowed money. If we extend all the tax cuts, we'll be borrowing $3.7 trillion from all over the world. If we pass just the tax cuts for that portion of your income under $250,000, we'd have to borrow $3 trillion. It's a hard case to make that borrowing $3.7 trillion from foreign countries that our grandchildren will pay off is fiscally reckless, but we can afford to borrow $3 trillion from foreign countries that our grandchildren will pay off, but that's fiscally sensible. I think the fact is we need to make these decisions all at the same time. Letting the tax cuts expire would be unpopular. But the other choices we have to make are unpopular too. I think next year when we start getting serious about deficit reduction, if we ever do, we're going to find that the choices we have to make next year are a lot more unpopular than just letting the tax cuts expire.
Funny that with our debt to China and not to mention Saudi Arabia, maybe even Iran, that you would think that might be a big issue for the right, for the Republicans, for the Tea Party, and yet it's odd. I don't recall hearing a lot about this from them. Do you know where they are on this?
Well, I have no idea, but the fact is that we don't have a sensible policy. We're going around like we're trying to do deficit reduction, and when the first thing out of your mouth is tax cuts, you know it's not a serious discussion. We need to put all of the decisions we have to make on the table and try to make the best decisions we can. We're sitting up here talking about trillions of dollars in tax cuts. At the same time, we don't have enough money for perfunctory cost of living increases for our federal employees. The Simpson-Bowles recommendation that had tax on Social Security, Medicare, in the mortgage deduction, and a lot of other things that I think would be dead on arrival in Congress, if you add it all up, it would create about $3.8 trillion in deficit reduction, about exactly the same of the let the tax cuts expire decision. We need to put all of them on the table at the same time and make a rational choice.
The White House, we've learned, is sending Vice President Biden to meet with the Democratic caucus tomorrow. What will you tell him about this entire deal?
Well, I think the first thing we have to acknowledge is if the idea is to extend it 2 years, that you might as well get it over with and make them permanent, the whole $3.8 trillion. The idea that if you don't have the backbone to let the tax cuts expire today, you're certainly not going to do it in the middle of a presidential election when the Tea Party can threaten all the Republicans with primary challenges, and you've got 22 Democrats running for re-election in the Senate who would be running essentially against Santa Claus because they're going to be saying, let's make the tax cuts permanent for everybody, and you're going to be running as Grinch. That's not you can't expect that to happen. The fact of the matter is, when we get 2 years from now, kick the can down the road 2 years, that at that point they'll make it permanent. You might as well do it now and get it over with. We need to make the choices, make them all together, put them all on the table, and make the least unpopular choices because you can't do deficit reduction and maintain any popularity. It's all going to be unpopular.
Yeah, especially when you're borrowing the money from who knows where. Representative Bobby Scott of Virginia, thank you kindly for some of your time this evening.
Thank you.